way, please.
Thank you very much. Anna Milikan, Protection of Rights Without Borders. In Armenia, environmental activists and journalists continue to be subject to defamation cases by politicians and businesses facing heavy fines. While assemblies are organized without hindrance, at times police resorts to excessive force and uses unauthorized means, including stun grenades. Protesters are speedily prosecuted. However, investigations into police abuse drags on for years without results. We were able to secure even the judgment from the European Court on a case while the investigation in Armenia is still continues for 9-10 years on the same case. So there is a need to support human rights defenders and journalists with legal aid. However, with reduced funding to civil society organizations providing pro bono legal aid and extremely high fees of private lawyers, this leaves human rights defenders legally vulnerable. Azerbaijani government has intensified its repression of domestic critiques. Dozens of journalists and human rights defenders, including peace activists, who are prosecuted for daring to speak to their fellow Armenian colleagues, have been charged and prosecuted on fabricated charges. This pattern reflects a broader trend of state-driven efforts to silence dissenting voices. When we speak of most common challenges for human rights defenders to operate in the OSCE region, in case of Azerbaijan, we can check all of the above options. We observe daily ongoing physical and judicial harassment of human rights defenders and journalists in Azerbaijan, including arrests, torture, denial of rights, which is coupled with legal limitations to operate for media and civil society organizations, including financial and administrative burdens. And they are left without effective remedy to bring those complaints, given that the judiciary in the country is not independent. Lawyers defending victims in political sensitive cases face threats, disbarment, or reprimands from the Bar Association that lacks independence itself. This conclusion was done by the UN Committee Against Torture in its recent concluding observations on Azerbaijan. Most of the Armenians who are unlawfully detained and tried in Azerbaijan at the moment, 23 people, are represented by state-provided lawyers. These lawyers lack independence and fail to effectively provide their legal services to defend Armenians. In cases where a law of their choice is engaged, they are subject to harassment and undue pressure, undermining their opportunities to effectively defend their clients. Azerbaijan also resorts to the practice of transnational repression, including physical attacks on exiled human rights defenders, but also uses cyber attacks, including Pegasus spyware, which is used not only against Azerbaijani nationals, but also against Armenian public figures, including journalists and human rights defenders. We also speak of the use of paid trolls on social media that intimidate critiques, but also misuse of international legal tools, including Interpol request and extradition. With no effective remedy in place in the country, we usually resort to the European Court of Human Rights. However, recently, the president of Azerbaijan announced that Azerbaijan does not consider itself bound by the European Court of Human Rights judgment, thus creating more grounds not to enforce the judgment that mostly relate to the persecution of human rights defenders and journalists. We discuss here what can be done to protect human rights defenders, as if this is for other actors. But the participating states, the delegations present here, also have a valid tool in their hands that could be used and was used in a similar context before. This is Moscow mechanism. With increased isolation of Azerbaijan from international monitoring and scrutiny, UN agencies being closed as we speak, and international media's access being restricted, it is a pressing need to invoke the Moscow mechanism now in relation to the human rights situation in Azerbaijan, and more specifically toward the practice of politically motivated persecution. We also have the recommendation for ODIHR that shall explore ways to do trial monitoring in politically sensitive cases in Azerbaijan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution.